Yes, hello and welcome. It's another Confessions podcast. That's what this is. Another audio array of terrible tales from the very, very sinful Radio 2 listener. This week's concise collection includes a drastic double dating drama, a brace of bodies in the bath, not as bad as you think, a right old rumpus at the Royal Albert Hall, and a deathly fish dish. That's a neat summary. Here it is in all its gory detail. This comes from Sally. Thank you very much indeed. Dear Father Simon and the Very Caring Collective. In 2009, I was a free spirit, single, and in a dead-end job with the local council. That meant that no one knew when I turned up. I could be 2 hours late and very hungover and no one would know. I spent my free time partying with friends. Polly, who was a kept woman at the time, fed up with her husband and was always up for adventures in the local hostelries, and Tess, who was single and had a slightly more important job in accounts, i.e. she had to turn up on time and not smell of cider. Together, we had many adventures, all of them involving cider, indie rock, and goth music.
She's going to do very well.
Is that right?
Yeah.
As well as dancing and visiting public houses. I had the occasional date where I would invite the girls along to view the potential beau and score him on his looks, charm, and overall ability to go to the bar and return with drinks for all of us. We were attending one of these aforementioned dates when the incident in question occurred, and I had the most stressful night of my life. It was a Tuesday night. I was out in a pub when, I'll call him Unacceptable A-Name, turned up. He was nice and friendly with floppy, shoulder-length hair, and I agreed to meet him the next week in a local rock pub on the Saturday night. When I got to work the next day, only an hour late but feeling a little worse for wear, I quickly emailed the girls, told them about the boy I had met, and invited them along too, because there is, as you know, safety in numbers. I then settled into my routine of not doing much, as it was a Wednesday after all, and therefore the countdown to the weekend had begun. Who'd have thought that?
I like her even more.
So with the date set and the girls invited, I promptly forgot all about the conversation with Unacceptable A-Name and thought about making plans for the rest of the week. Friday night came and I was out on the town at a leaving do as a colleague had managed to escape to pastures new. We all went for an Indian and then on for drinkies and gossip, as you do at leaving do's, and the person leaving worked in HR, so I thought we'd get some good gossip as they were leaving. The evening progressed and we went for a dance at a pub that had a small area that passed for a dance floor and an overly large sound system that seemed only to play Slayer. It was then across the...
Wow.
Can you dance to Slayer?
Well, with difficulty, I would have thought, yeah.
You would.
It was then across the dance floor that I saw what can only be described as a drop-dead gorgeous Clark Kent look-alike. You need to know I have a thing for Superman. He looked at me, my legs went wobbly. He looked surprised, I smiled, and he bought me a drink. Everyone else got bored and left. He walked me home, we kissed in the moonlight, it had me in its spotlight, etc. We agreed to meet up on Saturday. As we both frequented the local rock pub, it seemed to be the best place to meet up. I went to sleep with visions of being rescued by Rock Superman. I woke up fully clothed, got changed, dragged myself to the office and replayed the conversation with the Clark Kent look-alike and felt all squishy inside. Saturday, rock pub. I had no idea why this rang a bell. I must be in love. Saturday came and this uneasy feeling was still playing on my mind. I texted Polly and Tess, who said they were looking forward to the meet but didn't help any further. I got ready and headed out, and that is when it hit me. The boy from last week with the floppy hair.
Oh.
Unacceptable
A-Name.
Yes, Unacceptable A-Name. Yeah. And the Clark Kent look-alike. I had double booked my dates. What should I do? I liked them both. And I'm doing myself and the girls out of 2 individual dates and all the drinks we were going to miss out on. I think she's got to think about
all the drinks we were going to miss out.
Now, I know what I should have done, something sensible. However, these sensible brain cells had already keeled over as I had preloaded with some leftover 2-day-old curry and pizza and Earl Grey that I had found while snooping for hairspray in my housemate's room. I hatched a plan. With little time to explain, Polly and Tess were waiting for the boys when they turned up, and during the course of the evening they did a sterling job in distracting one while I flirted with the other. My dates suspected nothing. The end of the evening came and my mind was made up after a quick girls' conflab in my office, a.k.a. the ladies' loo, the cubicle at the end. Polly asked the Clark Kent look-alike to go to the bar, and while he was gone I pretended I had a taxi booked and asked Unacceptable A-Name to walk me to the taxi rank, which he dutifully did. Walking off into the night, we kissed. He said he'd see me next week, as I was possibly, really, the actual girl of his dreams. And apparently I looked like a young Nico from Velvet Underground.
Wow.
Anyway, he walked off into the night. I then got a very confused taxi driver to just drive me round the corner and drop me off outside the pub where Tess and Polly were distracting Clark Kent. I came back to the table exclaiming, "Oh, you wouldn't believe the queue in the ladies' loos."
No, you wouldn't.
No. In true Superman style, Clark Kent asked to walk me home, and I accepted. A good job, as I'd paid the taxi driver my last £5 to drive me a few feet round the corner. He walked me home, we snogged and agreed to meet up next week, however not in the same rock pub, as I said it was too loud to talk, and he agreed. I don't know if Unacceptable A-Name turned up at the rock pub the next week, or any time after that looking for me. I have since seen him around, and I've always hidden whenever I have. He never got my number, so he couldn't phone me to find out what happened after I got in the taxi. I'm hoping that he might have forgotten all about me, but then I was the girl of his dreams, so maybe I spoilt his life. Anyway, I need to ask for forgiveness from Unacceptable A-Name, who, without knowing it, was pitched against a Clark Kent lookalike in a dating head-to-head that he was bound to lose. I also ask forgiveness from my long-suffering best friends Polly and Tess, who had no choice but to be complicit in my deception and had to deploy their amazing and innovative distraction techniques. Most importantly, I ask forgiveness from the aforementioned Clark Kent lookalike, who sadly did not get away, and 4 years on, has to put up with me on a daily basis, as we now live together in prenuptial bliss. He has no idea, until now, how close he was to escaping. As for me, I was eventually sacked from the council job, and now I'm in a very boring and sensible employee as quality control, and I think this is penance enough for my actions. Just in case it isn't, I'd like forgiveness, please, from your honourable collective. Well, Sally, she's a goer, isn't she? You should see what... Took quite a lot out as well. Anyway,
that's good.
Rebecca, what do you
Clark
think?
Kent doesn't sound like much of a goth indie type who would frequent rock pubs.
Think for Superman.
Yeah, I suppose so. I think Unacceptable A-Name had his heart broken completely unnecessarily. She could have just cancelled the date, just feigned illness or something. I can't see why she went through all that.
Well, because she got drinks from both. She got drinks from both.
Well, that is not a good enough excuse. I'm sorry. I feel very sorry for this person. He's probably called Alan, isn't he?
Yes, Unacceptable A-Name.
Yeah. So I feel sorry for him. Admittedly, she did end up with Clark Kent, who's obviously the man of her dreams, so that's good. But I'm not going to forgive the A-Name thing. No.
No, how can I forgive him with that unacceptable attack on people with A-names? And mine in particular. So, no, I don't forgive at all on this one.
It's not about you, Dad. It's not about you.
Paul and Tess, well, they enjoyed every minute of it, didn't they, on the night, I suspect, or on the nights. And Clark Kent, he's a winner! The boy is a winner. You don't need to apologise to him. So, Unacceptable A-Name, you certainly do need to apologise. Unforgiven. How can I give it? I'm shocked.
It's not looking good.
Shocked. Here we go.
I'm not a qualified agony aunt, but if I were, I'd say that Sally has clear commitment issues here. She needed to have come down one side or the other. Basically, you've met two blokes and you fancy going out with both of them. Choose one of them. Just choose one of them. Exactly. Well, pay for your own drinks. There's a wild idea. How about going to the bar and getting your purse out, Sally? Yes.
What about Unacceptable A-Name?
Well, whatever. Don't care about him. Was it Floppy Herdman? What's he doing listening to goth? Anyway, I'm going to say not forgiven. Just because she's a buy around.
Well, it's looking like no. That's the first. There's no forgiveness from any of you.
Yeah.
Don't miss out on 2 Mail. It is back and it's funkier than ever. That's what I'm saying. And into the collective, we welcome the very small Alan Dedicate.
Bless you, my child.
We've given him the tiniest chair to make him...
Yeah, I'm down here somewhere, everybody.
Take him down a peg or two.
I'm down here.
Sister Rebecca, Brother Matt are here. You don't... Calm down. Give him a biscuit, somebody. A cup of tea.
I can't see.
So, tonight's Drive Time Confession. Send in yours, of course, confessions at bbc.co.uk. This from Helen. Helen, thank you very much indeed. And yesterday we were talking about board games, and we're picking up on that theme. Dear Simon and the kind, caring confessionals, and Matt.
Hey! Result. What a result that is.
Sorted. You invited board game-related confessions, which I did just a while back, and I believe this might qualify if we can include chess in the board game category.
I think we can.
It's
What
a
else
game
would it be?
played on a board, so it's there.
It's a game.
My name is Helen, and my confession goes back to the early 70s. This is when flares were in and West Coast music was the way to go, and I was living in a large, fabulous flat in Scotland's capital, a student at the university. The flat was shared with lots of others, all in different student settings, and some actually working and earning a living, though not many. There were, get this, 5 bedrooms, 2 doubles and 3 singles. I and my best mate had a room each upstairs. The 2 larger double bedrooms downstairs held a couple and 2 guys who were pals. And the third downstairs bedroom belonged to a single female friend whose boyfriend tended to spend 90% of his time there too. On the night in question, I was downstairs playing a challenging game of chess with one of the other two guys in his room. Chess, you might like to know, had become something of an obsession for me, says Helen, and my pal too. And we had been encouraging our flatmates to get involved. Chess, as you'll know, is an absorbing game requiring focus and concentration. My opponent and I were duly focused and concentrating. And after a while, we were exhausted and we needed a break for the usual take a comfort break reasons. And because we were probably not doing very well, we decided to have a cuppa. So we went to the kitchen next door. Now, during this break, a friend called from up the stairs, perhaps a little aggrieved at my absorption in the game, and asked whether I should have a bath. Because apparently it was my turn. These are student... it's a student accommodation, okay. So you have to do it on a weekly basis. It was my turn, apparently, says Helen. I should point out that we had a truly stunning Victorian bathroom with a huge bath on a raised platform, and that this was upstairs above the bedroom of the single female. This is very relevant.
Oh, no.
I said, yes, please, and I carried on making the coffee. So there we were, having coffee. And the truth, Father Simon, is that while we were moving our bishops and our pawns and our knights, we were actually not just watching each other's moves, we were also keenly watching each other.
Really?
I have to say that there was a frisson between me and my fellow chess player. Yes, there was indeed a stirring. But, you see, we were mid-chess game, and now my chess opponent turned our innocent coffee break into a surprising moment of intimacy. And, to cut to the chase, some full-on snogging.
Hello.
So, we took our coffees, returned to the chess, and played out many more moves, some of them chess-related. Focus and concentration may... It has.
Has it been vetted?
Focus and concentration may have... You should see what we took out. Focus and concentration may have shifted from the board occasionally.
Oh, yeah.
We were undoubtedly focused and concentrated, but I've got no idea how the chess worked out. Sometime later, my flatmate upstairs penetrated our focus with a piercing scream. And this was followed by more screams from other people. Single female and her boyfriend had just started going to bed when their ceiling collapsed.
Oh, no!
Followed by gallons and gallons of hot soapy water with lemon and chamomile essence added. Yes. That's what you did.
It's tasteful in those days. Yeah.
Imagine forgetting that a bath was being run upstairs. I mean, how could that happen? Well, it just did. Best friend had turned the bath on but hadn't checked. I had been somewhat distracted. No one else knew it was running. It overflowed big time and came cascading down through the ancient ceiling of the bedroom below. The gorgeous bath apparently wobbled precariously, thankfully stayed put. But oops, times 10. Friend upstairs furious, enraged even, me and chess opponent still somewhat bemused, guilty, but still rather preoccupied with our new moves. Single female whose room was demolished was remarkably sanguine and chilled, maybe due to the total soaking that she and all her belongings had received. We reported the calamity to the landlady and it was all duly sorted by insurance and time. But it was quite a night, and I do offer apologies to the landlady, to whom we never actually told the full story. Well, who would, says Helen. To the single female and her boyfriend, who were remarkably understanding and non-judgmental, and to my best pal, who was thoroughly disgusted by us, and probably also a bit worried about her pal's newfound best mate. Checkmate indeed. The story does have a happy ending, as I'm still best mates with her upstairs, and I married Mr. Chess Guy. Oh. And here we are 40 years later and still together. Blimey, that is scary. I still play chess, but I haven't flooded anywhere else yet. I think it's all forgivable, but do you? P.S. Matt, no art students were involved in the telling of this story.
Oh, yeah.
At Helen. There you go. There's her P.S. in a desperate plea to try and haul it all back. She forgot the bath was overflowing. She got distracted, causing catastrophic damage to an ancient and beautiful house in Edinburgh.
Well, it's a student house, wasn't it?
Well, but she does say I was living in a large and fabulous flat.
That's true.
In
It
Scotland's
does sound like
capital.
quite a posh student house,
It
I have
does
to
sound
say.
rather
And they with their
fantastic.
lavender in the bath. I mean, really, I think it was quite romantic, that story.
It was lemon and chamomile, by the way.
Sorry,
Yes.
lemon and
Not
chamomile.
lavender. No
Even
one goes to
posher.
a lavender bath.
No, they don't. Anyway, I think that some of the blame has to lie with the friend who turned the bath on. She should have checked it, for goodness' sake. And it was a student house. It was all insured. The single friend was fine. It was just a bit of water. I mean, it wasn't a fire or anything. It was all damage that could be easily
Cascading
fixed.
gallons from a height.
Yeah, but I think, and also I'm a big fan of chess, so for that reason I'm also going to forgive you.
Let's see what the Dean of Devon
I forgive as well. The bath stayed where it was. That was the main thing. Insurance will have covered it all anyway. And as by the own admission, in that letter, which has just been handed to Matt, hasn't it? Have you got that letter? No. It says in it that the best friend didn't check. That's the whole point. You can't just run a bath for a friend and walk off. That's not the way it works.
Isn't it?
I've done that many times myself.
Is that written down somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. So you should check really first.
What do you think, Brother Matt?
Well, I've got here's something to reveal. We all knew, everyone in that house knew what was going on when you were disappearing off into this room. Oh, we're off to play a bit of chess. Yeah, I'll bet you are.
A few moves.
Yeah.
Rook to Queen's Pawn 5.
Buying that, you with your chess. But here's why you're not getting forgiven.
Why?
Because when I was a student, we had a bath, but it wasn't a posh Victorian bath. We had a purple bath with orange tiles.
Nice.
And plastic, and it was awful. So frankly, anyone who gets to live in some posh student res where you've got a big Victorian bath with loads of lavender and chamomile floating around, you get everything that's coming to you.
I think it's
all your fault, not forgiven.
Tonight's from Amanda. Thank you, Amanda, for this tale. Father Simon and the Caring Collective, I wish to seek forgiveness for inconveniencing lots and lots of people in a very big way. My story begins in early summer 2013. So when I was just last year, when I decided, I worked that one out all by myself.
Well done.
When I decided that my 85-year-old mother needed cheering up. That was mistake number one. After discussion, we agreed on a trip to the Royal Albert Hall to see the proms. It should be mentioned now that my late father always refused to take my mum to the proms at the Royal Albert Hall. He made all sorts of excuses, from there being nowhere to park, to having toothache, even though he'd happily taken my brother and I to see Peter and the Wolf there, and that was all fine. Maybe that should have been a warning. However, I left my mother in charge of booking the tickets, and I waited for them to arrive with a feeling of pleasant benevolence, safe in the knowledge that I was doing a good deed, which would earn me a few brownie points, even though she was paying. Once the tickets arrived, it was quickly decided that we should drive to London. Here is where I volunteered my long-suffering husband. He had been bought a ticket as well, so at least he could help. It wasn't very far, after all. The day of the concert arrived, and we all piled into the car and left Mother's house on the Suffolk border, giving ourselves at least 4 hours to get there. Somehow, during the previous couple of months, 20-something-year-old son had also managed to wangle a ticket, so it was going to be a super family outing, I thought happily. The weather, which until then had been perfect, took us by surprise. The heavens opened, there were floods and thunder and hail, and it led to terrible traffic jams and road chaos. We eventually limped into central London, knowing we were going to be horribly late, if not miss the thing altogether. I phoned ahead, and the staff agreed that if we could be there by 10 to 8, they could rush us in during a lull in the proceedings. The race was on, and husband drove like Lewis Hamilton through the traffic, and to save time, he said, he dropped Mother and I outside the Royal Albert Hall with seconds to spare. Then he went to park the car, saying that he and our son would see us at the interval. Mother and I raced around to the correct door and arrived, dishevelled and panting, outside the auditorium. The staff were none too friendly, but opened the door and ushered us inside. It was then that I realised I should have arranged the seats and not my mother. She had chosen the seats right up in the gods, virtually in heaven. 2 rows from the back and right in the middle of the row. There is only one speed that an 85-year-old can climb stairs, and it ain't quick. By the time we got to the row, I had actually lost the will to live, literally, which is a little bit of an overstatement. Then we had to inch down the road, trampling and stomping on all the poor people who had actually managed to get there on time. We then had the trauma of removing my mother's coat, scarf and gloves, followed by walking boots, hat and jacket, further irritating our fellow theatre-goers. Not really a theatre, but anyway, still, it's the Royal Albert Hall. I started to relax and quite enjoyed the end of the first act, all 10 minutes of it. We were joined by husband and son during the interval, and all seemed fine when the second act started. Second act, it's not quite... I don't think actually Amanda's got the hang of this.
We're not going to quibble with these things, though. We're just going to let it go.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was all going well until I became aware of a high-pitched whistling coming from my mother. It was her hearing aid battery, which was running out. After fiddling with it, then rummaging through her handbag for a replacement, she announced to everybody that it was too dark to see anything. The man on her right, who had previously been twitching, lost it completely and hissed, "Will you please be quiet?" To which my mother replied loudly, "Don't speak to me like that, you rude little man." Our son, having had a couple of pints during the interval, decided at this point he'd had enough and it was a good time to leave, and he did so, trampling and stomping all over the poor people who'd been trampled and stomped on moments earlier by Mother and I, and he kept a special one for the rude little man. I spent the rest of the concert with my head in my hands, too embarrassed to do anything else, and I waited until everybody had left before getting up at the end. I can't even remember what the music was. It's definitely not an evening to repeat. I would like to offer my sincere apologies to everyone else at this particular concert. Please forgive me. Well, I would quite like to be. We've all done a similar thing, arrived a little bit late, asking everyone to move. It's very, very embarrassing. But anyway, Amanda's still sweating on behalf of her mum. What do you think?
I'm quite baffled as to why Amanda's mother had to remove her walking boots after their arrival.
They come from the Suffolk.
A little bit extreme, if you ask me.
Suffolk.
Yeah, I know, but they haven't walked from Suffolk.
No,
they
but
just walked to the Royal Albert Hall. Anyway,
you never know what kind of
just
weather
seemed a bit
it's
excessive, and I can understand why the man next to her was getting irritated. But it reminds me of my granny. I used to go to concerts with my granny, and she used to open packets of crisps and Murray mints and eat them really loudly.
Is that like
and
Haircut
talk
100,
really
that
loudly?
kind of thing?
No, proper concerts, posh ones. And she used to talk very loudly during them. So I'm sure it happens all the time. It's not Amanda's fault, is it? That her mother's hearing aid was running out. So I am going to forgive you.
Well, that's very nice, thank you. Brother Matthew?
Well, here's the thing. I have very little tolerance for people making any kind of noise in theatres, cinemas, whatever. I tend to make my feelings known
I bet you do.
Pretty vocally. However, that's when people are doing something that's their choice. In other words, eating crisps or talking on the phone or something like that. Nothing that happened here was what they had wanted. They arrived late because they'd been delayed by the weather. They were taking all the stuff off because they have to take the stuff off. Their hearing aid was starting to whistle because the battery's running out. It's not her fault. And I'm absolutely full square behind her with the, oh, do be quiet, you silly little man. I do like that a lot. So I am definitely going to forgive for that. And anyway, they were at the back. Hardly anyone could see them. They weren't spoiling it for anyone apart from rude little man. So, yeah, absolutely forgive.
But if you'd been that rude little man, which you could easily be...
You would never say... To an 85-year-old woman, you would never say, do be quiet. I don't think so.
You would.
I would never say that.
In the middle of...
Well, unless it was in a
Shostakovich.
film. If you said it in a film, then I'd be saying, yeah.
Interesting foodie confession here from Anton. Almost certainly not the real name. Dear Simon and the Sisters and Brothers of Mercy.
Well done.
I've enjoyed listening to your confessions over the years, often Matt-like in my ruthless summation of other people's weaknesses.
Right.
Safe in the knowledge that I am free of any such dark and hidden secrets. Well, my little bubble of smugness was dramatically burst recently by the inclusion of just one word by a fellow confessee, and that word was piranha. Remember the piranha story? It was a good one. This story takes place in 1998. We haven't had that many piranha-based confessions. But
For good reason.
It's promising, though. This story takes place in 98, a year in which England had nearly done well in the World Cup. The charts were a battleground between the Spice Girls and All Saints, and Billy. And I, having recently finished a catering course at college and adorned with fresh new chef whites, was working as a sous chef in a new and exciting restaurant in my local town. Are there any photographs of you in chef whites?
Yeah, somewhere out there, yes.
Excellent. We'll take some of those as well. The owner and head chef had designed a menu which included some pretty out-there dishes for the time, including kangaroo, ostrich, and a casserole of exotic meats that we used to refer to as the zoo stew. To complement the exotic fare on offer, the restaurant was adorned with 3 fish tanks, stocked with tropical fish, the pride of which was downstairs, and boasted a colourful group of guppies, an angelfish or 6, and 3 vegetarian piranha. The fish had been purchased and in some cases donated by the pet shop owner from next door, who had put the various species together to complement their colours and promote social harmony. Yeah, right.
Oh, lovely.
I must point out at this juncture that my position as sous chef had been somewhat self-appointed. There were only 2 of us in the kitchen, so I could quite easily have been considered as kitchen assistant trusted with chips and salad. But despite my slightly inflated sense of grandeur, the owner/head chef announced that he was comfortable enough in my abilities that he was going to leave me in charge whilst he went on holiday for the first time in nearly 4 years. As you can imagine, I was very pleased and resolved to undertake my duties with all the care and attention that would be required to maintain the high standards expected. Numerous lists of instructions were hastily written into my kitchen book, detailing which suppliers to call for what and when, what to do about invoices, when to feed the fish, and so on. The following week, Steve handed me the keys, Steve being the owner/head chef, shook my hand and stepped out of the door. That was it. I was the boss. I stood for a moment in the empty restaurant, surveyed my territory, and decided there and then that in this case, power would not corrupt. I set about my week in earnest, getting in early, being the last to leave, adhering to a strict 1 pint a night after work regime, and I'm pleased to say the week passed without incident, culminating in a full house on the Saturday night, with everyone happy and good tips for all. After much refreshment had been taken, attention from the staff turned to the nearby fish tank for entertainment, and I suddenly remembered that I hadn't fed them yet. I dutifully sprinkled in the flakes of dried food into all the tanks, and then, bolstered by, I have to say, gargantuan glasses of the grape, decided I was going to test the vegetarian piranhas' vegetarianism.
No.
I repaired myself to the kitchen, where, using my best knife skills, I very finely diced some ribeye steak, a bit of kangaroo, and some king prawns, a sort of surf and turf, if you like. I dropped the mix into the tank and watched as it drifted to the bottom. The piranha and its friends gave it an exploratory nudge and then left it well alone. Minutes passed. Still nothing. I have to say this was a bit of an anticlimax, so we cleared up and I agreed with someone else to come back on Sunday to clear the whole thing up. We were closed on Sundays, so after a somewhat difficult morning, we returned to the empty restaurant to make good for the owner's return on Monday. It was whilst clearing around the downstairs fish tank that I noticed the small meat and fish buffet had now been consumed. Unfortunately, so had all the other fish. It appeared that the prawns and the ribeye steak and the kangaroo...
Bloodlust.
Exactly right. It had stirred some sort of repressed bloodlust in the veggie piranhas, who, like vegetarians I know, still want to eat meat, really.
Oh, right.
It had even turned to cannibalism, as I now noticed that the smaller of the 3 piranha had a chunk missing from its tail, which I was pretty sure wasn't there before. Anyway, a combination of hangover and shock hit me, and I immediately decided to do what any self-respecting 19-year-old would do, lie through my teeth. On the owner's return, I explained that I had fed them as per routine and had come in on Monday. I'd just found a couple of dead uns, and the small piranha, I think, had got caught under the ornamental shipwreck. I think that's how it lost a bit of its tail. I somehow got away with it, but eventually left the restaurant, partly due to seeing the small piranha every day, which I'm sure used to give me the evil eye whenever I peered at the tank. So I need to ask forgiveness, not from the piranha, as it's a fish after all, but a bit from the owner for telling him such a terrible lie, mainly from the pet shop owner who, after more guppies were found dead, received a tirade of abuse from Mark regarding the mis-selling of the piranha as a vegetarian. Lots of love, Anton. Still a chef, but not working with live animals anymore. Which is very reassuring. Anyway, let's see what we make of this. Sister Rebecca, go.
I love that story. I just love it. Is there such a thing as a vegetarian piranha?
Yep.
Really?
Well, they're called pacu.
Are they? Okay. So, cause I thought that it was the fish shop owner who was mis-selling them and saying they're fine with other fish. But that is an extraordinary story, to feed a piranha kangaroo. I mean, that must be the first time that combination of
tempting,
beasts
wasn't it,
has ever been put together in a tank or anything. I think probably what he should have done was said to the owner, I think we should quarantine or separate the piranhas from other fish in the future, because they're obviously eating each other, nothing to do with me, Gov. So that way he could have, avoided the more fish being eaten in the future.
Yes.
But I think, he didn't mean to do it. It was quite funny putting kangaroo meat in the tank. So I'm going to forgive you.
I'm not sure whether we can ask for pet shop confessions. It just makes me
why
nervous.
not? No, that's all right.
Okay, well, let's just see.
Let's just do it.
See. If you have a good one, pet shop confession, a piranha confession, I'm not sure how many we'll get of those. Let's see what happens now with Novice Nigel.
Yes, old Anton. He was obviously overshadowed and celebrating quite hard after a marvellous week and a full service with lots of tips. But I do think it was Mark's at fault. Because it's very dodgy piranha he's moving on. It was his fault because these obviously patently weren't vegetarian of it. They did get a taste for it, and it wasn't really his fault that they started, and not just eating all the others, consuming a lot and their own little offspring. So, completely forgiven. And I would be intrigued to see what a surf and turf might taste of piranha and kangaroo. Intriguing.
Let's see what Brother Matthew makes.
I think it was a hostage to fortune always, wasn't it? Having these two so-called vegetarian piranhas when they were always going to turn at some point. There was always going this was
Bacon
always
sandwich
this
moment.
was always going to happen. They were going to go, yeah.
bluff.
Do you know what? I fancy a bit of other fish. Let's see what that tastes like better than the veggie stuff we're having now. So I am definitely going to forgive, if only because he referenced Sisters of Mercy at the start. So Sisters of Mercy reference definitely means forgiven.
You're
Well
a pushover.
done. I am.
So who did you forgive from this week's collection? Let us know. But most importantly, send us your own confession, please, because we all know you've got a good half dozen waiting to go. confessions@bbc.co.uk. More undoings for you next week. Don't forget, download the weekly Mayo, which is available now and every Thursday. Thank you.